Welcome to North Wilkesboro on a day that many people in NASCAR thought might never come. Yes, the NASCAR Cup cars are back. The last time NASCAR raced here, 7 of the drivers in this field had not yet been born. What a wonderful place, resurrected for the NASCAR All-Star Race. Hi, everybody. Mike Joy. My last trip here was when they ran the last few races here. I did some radio here in the 80s, into the 90s. Larry Mack won a race here. Your last trip here was walking away from this track in 1996 at the last race.
I mean, when I walked through the gate this morning, it became surreal that was truly the last time that I was here. But, you know, what they've done here with this facility and everything about it is unbelievable. But one thing that's the same is that old 5/8 mile track down there. She is absolutely the same.
And I mean, exactly the same. Still has the same character, probably a little bit more, Larry.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
A few more bumps, little patches. That's what I love about this race surface. What do people know behind the wheel of this thing? They don't know anything. They're going to find out right here in this practice session just what they have for a grip level, and they better hope that it's good because all eyes are on the prize at the end of this All-Star race.
So, Clint, to you, North Wilkesboro is a line in the history book, but you grew up racing on tracks much like this around the Midwest.
I'm an old school guy. I mean, I think anybody that knows me knows that. And, you know, over the years, we've been up here riding motorcycles. This was always the stop. If I had somebody in town and I wanted to show something that they've never seen, let's go show them North Wilkesboro. But to be back here with cars on the racetrack, we've already seen phenomenal late model racing, big names. All of our superstars were here the other night, Wednesday night. I was here to watch that. Harvick, man, he did a great job. Dale Jr., and Earnhardt behind the wheel of a number 3. Such a good sight to see at a cool old school track like this.
I bet you, though, 27 years later, the radio will say the same thing. Won't turn the middle, no drive off. You're going to be looking for solve the same problems.
All right. Well, you can help us solve them. So this will be a 50-minute practice session for all cars involved in the All-Star race and the NASCAR Open that will precede it. And then later this afternoon, we're going to have qualifying like you've never seen qualifying. The driver's job in qualifying will be to get the car in and out of the pit box. It's the pit crew that will determine the lineups for the qualifying heat races tomorrow.
It's going to be so fun to see. As I said, Wednesday night, I saw Suarez pull out. He was one of the guys riding along there with Harvick. Already has laps on this racetrack. Not in a heavy Cup car, but certainly laps around this racetrack.
All right, cars at speed. Now let's go down to pit road. Jamie Little.
Well, Mike, last week was officially our throwback weekend, but there's some throwback here at North Wilkesboro. Easy for me to say. The 29 of Kevin Harvick. The Harvick fans out there so excited about this. The number 4 is nowhere to be seen. He is officially the 29, like old school. And I talked to Kevin about this. He said there are so many layers that went into getting this and getting the okay. Did he have an issue there, Mike?
No, he didn't, but Daniel Suarez did. Turned it around in 3 and 4 already. We talked about the surface, how loose it was, bumps out there, character. I'd say that's exactly what happened to Daniel Suarez. You see the patches on the racetrack, Larry. A lot of patches around this place create a little bit of patchy scenario. And what I mean by that is that's grip. You'll hit that. That is fresh of a patch. It's got sand in it, so it's aggregate, right? And those tires want to grip to that. As soon as you hit that old surface, it might catch you off guard. Maybe that's what happened to Daniel Suarez.
Yeah, Daniel had only completed 1 lap, so he was only on his 2nd lap. But, yeah, talking to Rodney Childers, crew chief for Kevin Harvick, they actually did one of the late model races, and he said that was one thing that Kevin said. The grip was just so inconsistent depending on where you hit the patches and where you were on the older asphalt.
That might play into a hand, and what I mean by patchy, right? That's dirt track terminology. You hit a tacky spot. I got it from anything pretty early.
Ooh. Now, these are not Suarez's first laps on the racetrack. He finished 5th in the ASA race on Wednesday and 15th in the cars late model stock car race.
I want to go back to the dirt track, what I was talking about. That might play into the hand of a guy like, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell. Some of our dirt track guys, they're used to that traction being all over the place on a dirt track.
Let's check with Josh Sims.
Yeah, you know, guys, the name of the game is getting track time out here, especially at a track that these guys haven't been at before. So you've got 5 of the Cup regulars that are also participating in the truck race. So guys like Kyle Larson were already out there on the track earlier today, but we heard Kyle at the end of practice for the truck series talking about just how different it is getting used to this track in the truck than it is in the car, of course. But the more they can get out there, the more they can understand. That's why a lot of these guys ran in those late model races earlier this week, just understanding the track and the tire wear and how it's going to wear as the race goes on. Well, Kyle already coming over the radio and just saying that car is bottoming out just a little bit so far. So we'll keep an update on how Kyle.
You can see a lot of cars on a racetrack there. They're starting to get spread out enough around this small racetrack that everybody can get up to speed. But there was kind of reminded me again about a dirt track. They'll take off and get around there about halfway around, and the line wasn't exactly, you know, up to speed yet. Had to slow down.
Larry, one thing that's very different from the last time you and I were here back in the mid-90s is we have 36 cars, and 24 of them are going to be right in one tight pack as far as lap times are concerned. It's not going to be the fast guys, the mid guys, and the slow guys. Today, in today's NASCAR, everybody's pretty quick.
No, Mike, I mean, you see the same thing up here in this booth week in and week out. You look down at the score monitor, and the top 18, 20, 22 cars are all within a tenth or two of each other. There were 37 cars ran that final race in 1996. All 37 of them were still running at the end, but we only had 4 cautions. But the differential probably from 1st to 15th was huge when you go back to look at it qualifying.
Larry, watching that truck practice earlier, one thing I noticed jumped out right off the bat is not a lot of fall off. That caught me off guard. Tells me Goodyear brought a good tire for them. What do you think this Cup tire will bring us?
Well, it's the same tire combination that we just ran at Phoenix and at Richmond. So we know that it's going to wear, it's going to have fall off, but also look almost like Darlington last week. We anticipated all that fall off in Saturday's practice. It wasn't there, but look how cloudy and overcast it is. If we get that sun pop out, that's going to change, but this is a night race on Sunday night.
So obviously I wasn't here in 96 when you guys left this place. I have been here, done a little bit of homework, watched and studied that late model race. That's the only thing I had to go. The corner that seems to jump out to me is off of 4. That wall just really jumps out to get you. Saw a lot of carnage in that late model race Wednesday night, all off of 4 stacking up and getting into that wall.
Kyle Larson with the fastest lap so far, 20.615 seconds, 109 miles per hour. Brad Keselowski, Denny Hamlin, Chris Buescher, Chase Briscoe are the fast 5. Little incident here as watch what happens to Ryan Blaney when he gets loose off the corner.
Right there, stepped on the gas, comes out from underneath of him, trying to get down. Unfortunately, it was right in front of his teammate Logano. Got into him a little bit.
Yeah.
Did you hear how hard he had to board out of the gas?
And he had only run 8 laps. I promise you, that's not going to get any better. The best thing he can do is exactly what he did. Bring it to the garage here. Let's go to work on it. And that's one thing they get the opportunity to do with this format. These cars have not been impounded yet. They get this 50-minute practice. Of course, we have the pit crew challenge. Then they go through inspection. They've got 2 sets of tires. In the perfect world, you would make 2 long runs with maybe 2 different setups, 2 different packages to see what's the best.
It's a great shot of the diffuser and all the under aero aspect of these cars. Saw it on Ryan Blaney and his teammate Logano.
Now among the open cars, Chandler Smith is fastest. Ryan Preece, A.J. Allmendinger, Ty Gibbs, Noah Gragson are the fast 5 among the open drivers. I think the last race I saw here was 2010 when Bill Elliott brought a late model to the track for his son Chase to chase that $50,000 Pass Series race and won it. Ryan Blaney was in that race too. A lot of fellows who are now Cup stars did race here in one of the 2 racetrack revivals prior to last August.
Pretty cool looking car for Bubba Wallace this weekend. Got to be a bad man behind the wheel to drive a pink car. My buddy Tim Carrick back in Kansas City had the Guitars and Cadillacs car. She was pink and black, and he was a bad man.
And Bubba's one of a number of drivers actually doing double duty running the truck series as well this weekend.
Saw the back end of Christopher Bell hit that hole down that you were talking about in 3 and 4. That's what I like about this. I'm so glad that they left this old surface, didn't decide to repave it. That was in the plans to repave it, and then they decided not to, and I love it. I think these drivers, it'll be a better show because of that.
So one of the preemptive things that Steve Swift has done is he has acquired an epoxy-like bonding material that they mix with sand, and in the event a small piece of the track comes up, they can reset it. I mean, it's like being in the dentist office. They'll get it reset, they'll get it bonded, they'll get that epoxy cured, all in under 10 minutes.
Yeah, he said it's about 8 minutes to cure 100%. I couldn't believe it. You can see the aggregate in it right there, and what that is sand mixed in it. As you can tell, I mean, just like sandpaper, it would be abrasive, and those Goodyear tires are like it. You don't want to get up out of that, I can promise you that. You want both left side tires right on that patch.
You know, Clint, riding with Chase Elliott here, you kind of get a sense of it. One thing that's unique about this racetrack, the 13 degrees of banking in the corners, but you see him going up the back straightaway right now. You're climbing up a hill. And then when you go through 3 and 4 and you come off 4, you're going down the front straightaway. And actually, it's 18 feet difference in elevation from the middle of 1 and 2 to the middle of 3 and 4.
So that's going to be hard for us to show you, folks. That is something, even if I was watching this late model race in turn 4 or the back straightaway last year when I was watching Dale Jr., that's hard to see. From this booth right here at the 50-yard line, man, you can see him coming uphill a little bit, but it is a drastic difference between 1 and 2 to 3 and 4. And I make it easier getting into 3 and harder getting into 1. And that momentum is going to be hard to slow down.
It's not even. So look at it this way. The lowest point of the track is the center of turn 1. The highest part of the track is the center of turn 3.
Yeah.
I think the most important part is that momentum. Much like you hear us talk about it at Kansas Speedway, that tailwind down the back straightaway, those guys overdriving the corner. This downhill scenario, much like a runway, uphill or down, that'll entice you to get into that corner a little bit harder. Probably easier getting into 3 than it is 1.
We would see 250 RPM difference between the two straightaways, but you're absolutely right. The driver would complain about being loose getting in turn 1, using more brake, and it's because you're carrying more speed getting into turn 1 than you are turn 3.
Hey, I jogged this morning, believe it or not. You know, it's easier to jog downhill than it is uphill.
So Chris Buescher is fastest on the long runs, and that is not surprising since he was one of the drivers who did the tire test here. He has the best consecutive 15 and 20 lap marks over Hamlin and Harvick.
Then I'm going to go to the experience. You just said him. Kevin Harvick ran that late model race like we talked about. I'm impressed with Denny Hamlin and Bubba Wallace, his teammate, and Truex right there. That's 3 of the top 5, all coming from the Gibbs camp.
Weekend. Kyle Larson, Brad Keselowski, Denny Hamlin, Chris Buescher, Chase Briscoe are the fast 5 of the drivers who are locked into the All-Star race. For those that have to run the Open, Chandler Smith, Ryan Preece, A.J. Allmendinger, Ty Gibbs, and Noah Gragson are the fast 5. Now later this afternoon, the pit crews will qualify the drivers for their starting spots in the heat races that we'll broadcast for you tomorrow. Here's your point leader, Ross Chastain.
He was loose getting in. Did you see that? That car was way out from underneath of him, slideways.
You see Alex Bowman's name on the windshield, but this is Josh Berry in that 48 car, and since Josh was not in this car when it won last year, he will have to try to transfer by running the Open race early Sunday evening.
Some of the guys you talked about the pit crew challenge, some of them are practicing coming in. Here's Tyler Reddick. This is what you need to learn. What can I not do? That's what you can't do. Don't slide through that pit box. You're going to need to try that again, Larry.
Now note that concrete for the pit boxes and the asphalt pit road are new. The racing surface is not. That's carried over, but they did repave all of pit road, new walls inside and out, safer barriers, etc.
For me, you know, obviously that's different, but for me, the difference of the new asphalt to the new concrete. You come off of that, you got to figure out, and every place was different over the years. Sometimes the asphalt was even better. It seemed like it was more grippy. Then you get on that concrete, and some of it'd be slick, or it'd have way more grip. That's what you saw Tyler Reddick doing. Here he comes. Gibbs is sliding through his box. That concrete looks very slick. That might catch some of these guys off guard. Can't be too greedy, Larry.
Well, the caveat is it's basically the distance traveled over 3 pit boxes. And with a pit stop, a 4-tire stop, you know, the driver's not going to be coming down pit road and trying to get into his box and then leave. It's simply the distance, the time of 3 pit boxes, including that pit stop.
Yeah, but if you slide through your stop, if you slide through your box, you have to back up. And not to mention, that's the timing of it throws your guys off too. You need to stop on the line,
yes,
on the marks. That gives those guys the best opportunity to give you the fastest stop possible so you can start up front of the heat race.
And from what I'm seeing with cars skidding into the box and cars launching out, I think the drivers who go late in the qualifying order may have an advantage because there'll be some rubber down by then.
And they can watch everybody else make the mistakes.
Josh?
Yeah, the good thing about this hour-long practice session, it gives you extra time to get that car right. And for Chase Elliott, after that first run, he came in and said, well, this car easily getting tight on 1 and 2, and it doesn't have great drive off just because of those bounces he was having out there on the track. Felt good about it in 3 and 4, but they spent a lot of time in here in the garage before he went back out to get that thing right. 18th on the board during the first session. Hasn't picked up much speed since. Jamie?
Well, Josh, it's really interesting when you talk to drivers in this garage, none of whom ever raced a stock car here. There's different approaches. Kyle Larson's on top of the board who says, I don't like doing simulation. I didn't do simulation for this race. And then you have Kyle Busch in the 8. I talked to him before he got in the car, and he said he's done some sim work this week. He said, I put other Chevrolet drivers' setups on my car in the sim, and I spun out every time. So the one thing I know, I got to have a tight race car. But, Mike, I just think that's interesting, the different approaches and what will prevail here Sunday.
It's really interesting when nobody's ever been here. There is nobody in this field who has raced a Cup car here.
You know, I just like her, I talked to a couple of them because I was wondering the same thing. I was actually driving up here and I called a couple drivers and said, what'd you do to practice here? Talked to Larson and he told me the exact same thing. Said he got in a sim and just couldn't feel it. It would be hard, I would think, to simulate this racing surface. Patchy, you've got grip strips that we were talking about, an old surface, bumps that weren't there maybe a year ago. A lot of character on that racetrack. I would think that would be extremely hard. See him hit that and then hit the traction patch and straighten up, slick, 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 hits the grip and straightens the car right up. That's the patchiness that I'm talking about.
Well, in the simulation, the way the information is gathered, each manufacturer has what they call a wheel force car that they bring up here and gather data from the entire racetrack. But I think with the patches and everything that's went on, this surface has changed a ton since they did those tests.
Just since Tuesday and Wednesday night.
This was a champion drivers racetrack. They've had, what, 74 Cup races here in history, and 7 drivers have won 37 of those races, just more than half. And of those 7 drivers, every one of them is in the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
Wow.
About a half.
You know, Mike Clint, we're about halfway through this practice, and I think I'm seeing exactly what I anticipated. I see like all the Gibbs Toyotas. I see Ross Chastain's one car. They're all in the garage area on jack stands, like major wholesale changes, and another set of sticker tires behind it, possibly going to make another long run with a completely different setup to see which they like best.
Clint, let's take a ride with Kevin Harvick.
Yeah, this is exactly, you said it. This is a champion's racetrack. Here's a champion driver. Look at him sawing on that wheel. Listen to the throttle pedal. I mean, tap dancing on that throttle. Hooking the apron a little bit. Trying to get the throttle down, loose up off the corners. Just like you talked about. Can't get it to turn, Larry. You told us this before one car was on the racetrack. Too tight in the center, no drive off. Listen to him trying to put the throttle down. Way down the straightaway. Finally got that left rear feeling good to where he could put the throttle down. Pretty impressive.
All right, let's take a ride with Tyler Reddick.
He was another one of the drivers that actually did the tire test up here with Chris Buescher as well as Austin Dillon. Clint, after qualifying here, we would do everything under the sun to kill bottom end. torque in the engine. You know, you have the ECU today, it's easy to do, but we put short collectors on the headers, take timing out, just anything you could do to calm the bottom end down to keep it from spinning those tires.
It reminds me of a dirt track. That's exactly what you do on a dry slick dirt track.
These drivers are not full throttle even for 2 seconds on either straightaway.
I tell you, most of the checks hanging on my wall in that dirt shop of mine were won by Don O'Neill, and most of those wins came on 2 barrels, not 4.
There was a few times I looked at Robert Yates and I said, would you possibly consider letting us pull a plug wire off?
Really?
Just maybe.
They all, I mean, they pretty much all run a restrictor plate of some kind on those cars now. That kind of takes me down the argument. All right, put horsepower back in these cars. There's not every track, but there's a lot of tracks. I don't necessarily think that might be the winning ticket. Might help you on a restart, but you think about detuning that thing.
Eric Almirola.
You know, I would think one of the things, again, going back to the character, the bumps, you could see him bouncing through that corner. You see these cars, you know, they're so aero dependent on that rear diffuser. That means that rear end needs to be so low to the racetrack, just, but almost kissing the track. And then you can bottom out. And how they regulate the heights on that is through the stops, through the shocks. You bottom that shock out, it can get out from underneath of you in a hurry. That's probably what we saw with Suarez and maybe some others getting loose into the corners.
Larry, how much rear spoiler did you have the last time you raced here?
We had more than what these cars have got, but we didn't probably still have as much downforce. I mean, we're running the short track package here, the low downforce package. That spoiler right here is only 2 inches. You know, we went through several phases of spoiler height, but I can promise you we never had one as short as 2 inches.
No.
I honestly think with the, you know, the diffuser and all the underbody aero, I think you could take them spoilers off these cars.
Well, that just wouldn't look right. Didn't we try that once and put a wing on them with the COT, and that just didn't look right?
But I just want to see it. You think they're slipping sliding around now.
Okay.
That's what they asked for half the time anyway. This is going to be a good show. I like, again, takes me back to my comments about the racetrack, not repaving this thing. That's going to be a difference maker. You're going to have mechanical grip. It can't all be aero. This track's not a huge racetrack with the massive speeds anyway.
22 minutes to go in the one on hand to welcome NASCAR back to North Wilkesboro. Now, this is a replica of the original Holly Farm scoreboard, where the numbers had to be changed by hand. And you notice that order? That's how the last race here finished in 1996. And those numbers, they have to be changed by hand. That is not an electronic board.
Watch it. I just saw a glimpse of Bubba Wallace there. Pretty sporty car. That 23 car, you keep an eye on him. Long run car. I liked what I saw there. His graph is definitely trending very consistent lap times compared to a lot of cars out there. Not a lot of fall off.
And Clint, this is going to be one of those tracks. Yeah, you always want to be able to cut a fast lap, but who cut that fast lap absolutely means anything. It's those numbers you looked at and you spoke about right there. 15 lap average, 20, 30. That's what's going to pay the money.
I like this 34 car. Squint and don't look at the number. There he is right behind Bubba Wallace.
I saw it.
That's the Mark Martin Folgers Ford there, right?
It is. Yeah.
Very cool. Thanks to Freight Auctions for doing that. I love throwback paint schemes. No, I don't want to see them all year long, but every once in a while, kind of nice to go back to your roots and remember your past. And Mark was good here.
Yes, he was, no doubt.
Jamie?
Well, Mike, you talked about that old scoreboard with the 24 that won in 96. Well, the man who drives the 24 now, William Byron, wasn't even alive in 96. He was born a year later. But talk about an adaptable driver. No matter where we go, William Byron just figures things out quickly. 7th on the board right now, and they told him about 25 laps ago, run 10 laps and bring it in if you're not happy. Otherwise, keep running, and he just keeps turning lap after lap, so pretty happy with it. Of course, Byron, one of those that ran a late model race this week at this track, and he's also running a truck, so getting lots of laps here at North Wilkesboro.
And let me tell you who paid him a huge compliment here the other night. Bubba Pollard, who won that Cars race here, and in my mind is America's premier pavement late model racer today. He said, I can't believe how quickly William Byron picked up what you need to do here in a late model compared to the big heavy cup cars he's been racing. Had high marks for him, and of course Kyle Larson and some of the others who ran that race against the established Southern late model stars.
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm going to stick up for our cup drivers. It's been a lot of different facets of motorsports that I've been a part of and watched guys race, my peers race against. I'll never forget taking Jimmy Johnson to the Prelude to the Dream at Eldora Speedway, Tony Stewart's track. Never been in a dirt late model. Went out and won right off the bat that night and beat us all. Tony, me, Casey Kane, all of us were there. All the dirt racers that grew up with a dirt background, and he smoked us first time ever in a car. I've seen that happen before several times.
You know, we just saw that 21 car of Harrison Burton. It was so good to see them capitalize, not only on a good finish last week at Darlington, a good run. They ran just inside the top 10 the majority of that race. Harrison's first top 10 of 2023 ended up finishing well inside.
Just what the doctor ordered.
Wilkesboro, some teams logging laps and others practicing their pit entry and exit for the Pit Crew Challenge to come today that will establish the starting lineup for the heat races tomorrow.
He's going to back up and try this again. Let me try that again, boys. I didn't like that one.
But you know, starting position in a 60-lap heat race, starting up front's going to be important. That's going to be a big deal.
You see his guy telling him too far close to the wall, get out a little bit more. Not having a marker to put your left sides on, that'll be challenging for these guys. Let's see where he goes. Makes an adjustment. That way the Jack guy can get the left side up. If you're too close to that wall, he cannot do so. Made that adjustment. My man likes it. Go ahead and go. There's the launch. Them boys are ready, chomping at the bit.
A little bit of contact here. Corey LaJoie, Daniel Suarez. That's one way to pass.
It's going to be the #1 way to pass.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's going to be the,
yes,
the only
it
way
is.
to pass.
You know, racing has always been a contact sport, and stock car racing began on tracks roughly this size, and it's still a major part of the sport. And I think people like seeing a certain amount of that. Nobody wants to see bump them and dump them, but a little bit of contact, not bad for the grandstand.
Not at all. Absolutely
nope, not at all.
Well, I think, you know, as a fan, you look for the anticipation of that. You know, you see a guy, you see Suarez come up on the back of that car. He might ride there for a lap or two, try to work him over, but as soon as the pressure comes from behind and they start stacking up behind him, he's going to feel the pressure. That's when that comes. So that anticipation of knowing that he's going to move him, I love that about short tracks, just like North Wilkesboro. And I think the old surface, that's going to bring on more of that. You're going to slip around. You see cars getting loose into the corner. Car get out from underneath of you. You're going to try to check up, get that thing right back on the line, and somebody's going to be there to fill that void. And you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be mad at them, and at the end of the day, you should be mad at yourself.
So this week, a lot of column inches were spent and bandwidth was spent all about Ross Chastain. What's going to change? How he's going to change? Is his attitude going to change? Is anything going to... I don't care. I want to see what happens Sunday. All of this in the middle, you know, that's just talk and speculation, and I'm glad people are talking about it. He is the point leader. He is the most aggressive driver in NASCAR right now. He and Kyle Larson have gotten together numerous times in the last couple of weeks. But if anything changes one way or another, show me Sunday.
You're right, Mike. I do a Fox affiliate car wash every Wednesday afternoon with about 5 or 6, 7 affiliates around the Southeast. #1, #2 question was, with all of them, what about Ross Chastain? So he's creating a buzz, there's no doubt.
And, hey, you know, he's done a good job. He is leading the points. There is nobody that's ever created more buzz for a sport. And it's been a year since he's been in victory lane. And he owns the airwaves every single week. I've been telling all them guys that. I'm like, you know, you realize this guy hasn't won in over a year and walks away every single week with your highlight.
Yeah. Well, 9 straight races with an incident. is probably the most telling statistic.
Is that a good way to get highlights
of what's going on here? Well, common denominator.
There could be 10. Why not make it a cool, clean 10?
Well, let's switch subjects and move to Josh.
Tyler Reddick out of the car, 15th on the board during practice. What did you learn out there?
Yeah, the balance on our Beast Unleashed Toyota Camry TRD is pretty solid. Unfortunately, you'd hope the speeds are low enough here where dirty air doesn't really change the balance of your car, but we kind of got behind a train of 4 or 5 cars there, and the balance was really off from where it probably should have been. So when we ran there in a lot cleaner air, the balance of the car was much more where it needed to be. So I think we're pretty close. It's just a little bit here and there. But really excited to see what my pit crew can do out here a little bit later in qualifying for the heat races. So we'll see how that goes.
Thanks, Tyler.
Well, he ran plenty of laps. He ran 70 laps in this practice.
And that plays right into what we were talking about. All right, so the car is getting tight behind somebody. I'm going to need to get in front of them quick. I cannot afford to ride and wear my tires out in the wake of that diffuser and everything else in front of that car. I'm going to put the bumper to him, move him out of the way, maybe like Chase Elliott's going to do to Stenhouse right here, looking to the inside of him, make quick work with a pass. Cannot afford to ride behind them. It'll wear the tires out.
One thing I find very interesting about this weekend is the format of the All-Star race. Now, traditionally, the All-Star race has been NASCAR's petri dish for trying things. Stage racing, the choose cone for restarts, things like that. Not this year. 200 laps straight up with a halftime break. Wow.
But where it's going to get interesting is stage 2. You can only put one set of stickers on at any time during stage 2. And just talking in that garage area this morning, talking to crew chiefs, I think there's 21 crew chiefs locked into the All-Star race. I think there's 21 different philosophies right now down there.
Wow. Resource management.
Don't you think it'll be a caution, though? I mean, it'll be something that forces most of their hands. Somebody that's not running good, doesn't have the track position, they're going to be able to afford to gamble. And maybe, maybe that luck will have a chance to operate.
There's going to be gambling, there's no doubt.
And the worst that can happen is the checkered flag falls and those stickers are still sitting in your pit.
Well, that's what I love about, that format, though, or that scenario. The gamble's not going to come from the fast cars leading the race. It's going to come from somebody that's down and out.
Absolutely.
Doesn't have anything else to, they don't have anything to lose. Go for it.
But no invert, no gimmicks, nothing. It's pretty much a straight up race with a halftime break.
I just finally got over my headache from explaining last year's format.
Okay. But things have changed just a bit among the All-Star cars. But the All-Star and Open cars will all be mixed for qualifying. That will be interesting to follow.
See Christopher Bell again practicing that pit road. There's a lot of cars down here on pit road trying to get in that box, making sure they know the grip level in that concrete. And a lot of them have slid through that box, by the way.
Well, I was going to say it may come down to who does not make a mistake versus who has the fastest stop.
Usually does.
Jamie.
Well, you guys were talking about practicing pit stops. We saw William Byron practicing as well. So where do you feel like you are? I know your boys are out there and they're fired up for this pit stop competition.
Yeah, they're really excited. We've got a great pit crew, one of the top 2 or 3 all year. So it'll be nice to show them off. Hopefully I do my job and get in the boxes as quick as I can, because I do think there's some speed to be had there. And as far as the race car goes, I think we're pretty good. I think I'm a little bit tighter than I want to be, but it looks like the lap time looks pretty solid, and we don't really fall off too bad. So just got to keep working on it. But place is really slick. You're just kind of searching for little crevices of asphalt that have more grip than others, and if you get outside the groove, it's really sideways. So just trying to be precise, and hopefully the things I learned in the super late model on Wednesday will help as well.
William Byron getting as many laps around this place. 3 different types of vehicles here, Mike.
That's what we're talking about. You see these guys coming in and trying to practice sliding into that box. I think that's the key, Larry. Do not slide. Don't lock those pedals down, and lock the wheels up. I saw LaJoy was the only one, and he's going to make it another try right here. You see that white and orange car. That's LaJoy. He got into his box, kept the tires rolling, modulated that brake, and really nailed his stop, in my opinion.
So the drivers will not make a full lap. They will start 6 pit boxes away Timing will start 1 box away from the assigned pit box. There's one of the start markers, and there will be 2 different pit box or pit stalls utilized, so a team could be setting up in one while another team is competing in the other.
You know, a lot of front brake lockup, Larry. Even seen some rear brakes. Having a good balance. You hear these drivers talk about a good balance on that racetrack. A good brake balance on that pit stop is going to be important.
Well, and you really couldn't do it while you were doing this practice, but talking to a lot of teams, they're going to make a lot of changes to this race car for that pit stop. They're going to do things like unhook the sway bars and just put tie-down shocks on it. They're going to raise the left side of the car up a little bit because it's so low, sometimes hard to get to jack under, and they're going to work with different compounds of brake pads, stuff that you can't race, but all you need it for is that pit stop.
So those are the 2 pit boxes that will be used for the competition, pit stalls 15 and 18.
So you mean a bunch of racers had a competition and they decided to find some things that could possibly be an advantage?
Well, I go back to the old Rockingham pit crew competition. We first used to just take our regular race car out there and do it. Then we decided to start unloading our backup car because we did a few things. It got to the point where we were taking a 3rd car down there just for the pit crew competition.
Leave it up to racers, like I said. It seems so simple on paper.
And we'll discuss some of those things as we get closer to the pit stop competition this afternoon.
You know, that's going to, you see how much that car slides, you know, with the brakes and stuff. The driver liked it, or the crew liked it. But you see that. If you change it too much on me, Larry, I'm not going to probably be able to do too good a job either, because it's not like I have a chance to go out there and practice that. You know, you might leave too much on the table. That thing just all of a sudden stops. I might have to pull up into the box.
Yeah, it's going to be fine line between shallow and deep, no doubt.
Because that's the timing of the pit crews too, right?
Yes,
sir. See, Kyle just slid through over the line. But where you land is, and where they expect you to land, you know, by the time you're there, that changer's already, you know, migrating to his knees to make that lug nut exchange. And if that timing's off and he has to get up and move over, I mean, you're talking about 10 seconds, right? Or under 8 seconds. You make it 8.2 or 8.5. That's all a matter of him having to move, make an adjustment.
And the fueler will be involved. He needs to engage the fuel can and then remove it to make him part of the stop, though no actual fuel will be added to the car during that stop. So Kyle Larson has won practice with a lap of 109.14 miles per hour. Brad Keselowski, Hamlin, Buescher, Briscoe, the Fast Five, and of the open drivers, Chandler Smith, Ryan Preece, A.J. Allmendinger.
And Chase Briscoe, 81 laps he ran in that 14 car in his practice session.
I'm thinking these Gibbs boys are going to be hard to handle here tomorrow night. I like what I see out of the long run of the Toyota camp. Hendrick camp's obviously going to be good. I think there's some Fords up there. That RFK bunch has got some speed here.
Top of the show, Mike, I started talking about Kevin Harvick and this throwback to the 29 when he used to race that number. And Kevin, the layers are so deep, you had told me, just to make this happen. Tell us kind of what you went through and what it means to you to run the 29 here once again.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to the story, but I guess the keys to the puzzle were I hit him up with the idea to run the 29, and nobody at SHR said no. And I called Richard, and he said, you can do whatever you want. And from that point on, it's been a good partnership between RCR and Stewart Haas Racing to be able to put this car on the racetrack. And I think that the biggest thing that I learned is just the meaning that it has to so many people who aren't fans of ours and who are fans of ours. And it's just this particular car and the 29 and the red and white car and the first win. It's just a huge moment for the sport and for RCR and my career. And, there's just so many different angles that people think about it from. So to have this car on the racetrack is I don't know how we're going to, I guess winning a championship this year would top it, but means a lot.
Well, it certainly is fun and nostalgic, and the fans went nuts, Mike. They crashed the website when they announced he was going to run this car and this number once again.
How about that? Yes, that was Kevin Harvick's number when he first came to the NASCAR Cup Series. There's one of Dale Earnhardt's famed Richard Childress number 3s. A lot of authentic vintage stock cars are here to be part of All-Star Weekend. NASCAR Race Hub is coming up next, and we'll be back with you for the NASCAR Cup Series Pit Crew Challenge at 5:30 Eastern Time.